Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is DRH Elucidations with part 3 of our Xcode C++ Tic-Tac-Toe game tutorial. So obviously in our last part we went ahead here and we made this place marker logic function here. But today we want to focus on actually telling our program, okay, it's time to decide a winner. So let us focus on making the winner logic here, or the winner function in this particular case. So let's get started. So we're going to want to drop down here and let's make our winner function. So this is going to be a number. So we're going to name this guy int, call it winner because why not? Seems like as good as any name, right? All right, let's open this up with our curly braces. You know the drill here. We're going to start us off with a for loop. All right, so we're going to go for, and it's going to be int. Obviously, our starting variable, we're just going to make it I as a general rule of thumb, so equals 0 here. And, all right, separate that with a semicolon, have an I there. I is less than 3. We're going to run this loop. Now, of course, we have to make the loop in at some point, so every time this loop runs, we're just going to add 1 to this variable. So eventually, it will no longer be less than 3, and the loop will stop. All right, so let's go ahead here and open up another pair of curly braces. Alrighty, very good. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to just continue on here. So let's use a comment. So yeah, we're going to call this rows, label it. And we're going to go over here. Now, I should pause here just momentarily. So these two dashes, you may have seen them up here at the top. This is what you call a comment. A comment. You just use these to note various sections of your code. They're not actually read by the compiler, so they don't actually affect your program in of itself, but they are a handy dandy way to make notes for yourself and for other programmers collaborating on projects with you. All right, but nonetheless, let's continue on here. So we're going to write an if statement in this for loop here. So if our board, and we're going to open that up, and we're going to just say I here. Oh, it already did it for us. How nice of it. And we're going to open up another pair here, and we're going to call this guy 0. All right, and it closes that for us again. Nice. And if that equals, and we're going to be using this snippet quite a bit, so let's just go ahead here and copy that. All right, and we're going to do that, and we're just going to continue on here and continue through this. Obviously, we're going to do that. And we're going to come out of here and we're going to say return current player in a semicolon that. Now obviously we have to differentiate this a little bit, so this is going to be a 1. This is also going to be a 1, and this is going to be a 2. Alright. So, what we're going to do now, so now we've got the rows covered here. We're going to do something very similar. Let's go ahead and copy this full line here. Drop down just a little bit. Let's work on the columns now. So now that we have the rows, we can work on the columns. So we're going to call this guy columns. Now, obviously, it's going to be very similar to what we did up here. Obviously, we just have to reverse the I variable and the numerical variable here. Yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. So obviously, this now becomes a 0. This becomes the I. And, oops, not a 1, I. There we go. And likewise over here as well, we'll do the same thing. So this will become the 1, this will become the I, and we're just going to keep this pattern going. So there we go. There we go. Alrighty, so perfect. So now we've got that covered. And what we can do now, I might add some white space here, just to keep everything organized. Alrighty, so now let's come over here with some more logic. Break out of that for loop. So we're gonna make an if statement here. So if, and we're gonna come over here and I think I'm gonna grab this actually, because we're gonna probably be using this kind of structure for a bit. So we're gonna do if, and we're gonna go ahead here and if that equals, right? And you've seen this before, the setup here. It's very similar to what we've been doing, so. And then we're gonna come over here, we're gonna do, again, equals, right? We're gonna return the current player again. We're gonna return the current player, all right? And then we're gonna do that. In fact, what I should probably do is bring that outside of the parentheses there. So let me go over here and do that. Move it over a little bit. There we go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to differentiate this a bit. So instead of having I here, we're going to call that O. We're going to make this 1. And obviously we're going to do likewise over here like we've been doing. There we go. And we're going to make this as well. We're going to do that as well. Alrighty, so we're going to do something very similar as well over here. So we're going to copy that whole line, come down here, and we're going to go ahead here and we're going to modify this as well. So there we go. Just make a couple changes there and have that return 0 semicolon. And that should do it. That should just about do it. Okay, so first let's just kind of see just a smidge of what we did here. So we still have this draw board function that we're calling. Let's go ahead and run our program and see if we can kind of run through this here. Wait for it to build it. Perfect. So in programming, we have to remember that the program isn't necessarily counting 1, 2, 3. It's going 0, 1, 2. So it starts at 0 basically. So this, you can look at this as being 0, the row value being 0, the column value being 0 here. And then this is obviously row 0. This is the first row, it's going to be 0. It's the second column, so this is going to be 1. So 0, 0, 0, 1, and 0, 2. And then you can do the rest, right? 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. All right, so why did I bring that up? Well, it's good to visualize what you're doing here. So if the row is 0, or rather, excuse me, this I could be any of these integers right here. So no matter what row you pick, right, if the first slot's filled, the second slot's filled, and if the third slot is filled, you won, right, going this way horizontally. Likewise with the column, right, it could be any column, right, the I right here. If the first slot 0 is filled, 0, second slot 1 is filled, right, third slot 2 is filled, then again, you win going vertically. Alright, so now I'm sure you can guess what these last two lines of code here do as well. Alright, so we have 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, you won. Again, 0, 2, 0, 2 up here, 1, 1, it's in the middle. So that's why it's in both places for doing the diagonal now, as you can tell, and then 2, 0. And again, both ways you win diagonally. So diagonally, diagonally. Alright, so that's what we did there. Um, before we conclude, let's go ahead here and let's make a function that will allow us to swap between the X or the O place markers. Okay? Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start with that function. So I'm going to call this guy void swap. I'm going to call it swap player and marker. So actually, yeah, we're going to swap our X and our O markers, but we're also going to swap our player as well. So we'll do all of that in one function. So let's open this guy up. Alright, now let's get started. So start off with an if statement, of course. So if our current marker, oops, there we go. If our current marker is indeed an X, if it is indeed an X, right? If for whatever reason the current marker is not the X, then obviously our current marker has to be the O. It has to be an O. If it's not an O, else, right, our current marker has to be, it has to be X, right? That's how Tic-Tac-Toe works. So yeah. Alright. So there you go. Now we've handled the switching between our X and our O. So now what we need to do is just do the player, which is basically uh, it's very similar. Obviously, all we have to do here is change our variable name here to player, right? Um, and we can just do that for all subsequent spots here. So let's do that. There we go. And we'll do that over here as well. Perfect. And of course, we're not talking about these characters anymore. We're talking about integers. So let's do one, player one. If you're not player one, then you got to be player two. If you're not player two, else, right? Then you've got to be player one, right? All right, very good. So now we've got the win function set up, the winner function, and we've got the ability to swap between our place markers and our players. So in the next part, part 4, we're actually going to start writing out the full game logic for the game and putting everything that we built up to this point together, and we'll see how it goes. Alrighty, well, if you've been enjoying this tutorial series so far, again, please do feel free to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so that way you can be one of the first to know when part 4 does finally hit YouTube. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and comment as well. Alrighty, guys, take care.